Good morning, St. Augustine. Your access to the voices of top local newsmakers starts now. Here's your host, Liz Ryan.
Good morning, and thank you for tuning in. I have a very, very interesting guest with me this morning, and we have a lot of ground to cover. So I'm going to ask him if he'll return again next week. So this is going to be a two-part show, two parts with Clay Murphy, St. Johns County Commissioner. Good morning, Clay.
Good morning, Liz. How are you? And absolutely, we can do 2 weeks.
Thank you, because there's a lot to talk about.
Yes, ma'am.
First off, let me start by saying thank you for joining me today. And as a reporter, Clay, my experience with you has been terrific. You've always been cordial, helpful, and responsive, and not all electeds are, to be perfectly honest. So first of all, I'd just like to start off by thanking you for that.
Well, you're very welcome. The first thing they told me when I got elected was, don't trust reporters. Don't talk to anybody in the reporter world. But, you know, I've found you to be trustworthy, and that's so rare in today's world. So you've earned that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate those kind words. I truly do. So as far as your experience on the board so far as a county commissioner, what have been pleasant and unpleasant surprises?
Well, let's talk about the pleasant surprises. My expectations coming in was that I would get a 50-point IQ jump when I got elected and a magic wand. I was disappointed to say that I didn't get either one of those. But being in the job has allowed me to connect with people in a way I never thought I could. I get calls and emails and text messages all day, every day, with people who need something. They need help, whether it's – I had a lady today. Is concerned about puppy mill. You know, they're selling puppies on the side of the road. What can we do to fix that? People call me about drainage. They call me about the neighbors burning in their burn pit. What can we do? There's so many things all day, every day, all over the county, not just in District 3, but in all 5 of the districts. People call and say, help. Point me in the direction that I need to go to get help from this issue. And I guess the biggest surprise for me is that we have an incredible staff. Like when I call a department head director on the phone and say, can you help me help these people? First of all, they got right on the spot. I mean, it was one of those things to where I would get an answer within sometimes minutes, but certainly that same day. I know that we were still dealing with a little bit of residual from the FCC garbage switchover. And when someone would call me and say they miss me today, I would call the public works director, and within 20 minutes, someone would be out there taking care of them. So that's probably been the biggest surprise for me. Our county administrator and those department heads and the people that work for the county, I'm so honored to be a small part of county government because they really love this county and they work really, really hard for us. So that's probably been the biggest surprise. The biggest downside, I didn't get an IQ jump and I didn't get a magic wand. And things grind painfully slow in the county. There are laws and rules and other things to consider other than my feelings and what I want. I have to weigh it all. You know, you've got 325,000 people in this county that I represent, and they don't all think the same. And so I have to be empathetic to all of them while making a decision alone. You know, I'm alone in making this decision. They can't do it for me. Some groups have tried to tell me that, you know, we do the research for you. All you have to do is vote the way we tell you to vote, and that's not me. I don't go that way. And there's other people on the other side of the spectrum that say the same thing. All you have to do is team up with our group, and we can do this and we can do that. And I'm like, that ain't me. You know, I'm going to do my research. I'm going to pray for wisdom from an all-knowing God, and I'm going to vote my conscience. And if it falls on the side of one group or the other, then that's just the way it is. People get mad and say, well, you're not following along with this group. And I say, I'll never just follow along with that group. I'm going to do my homework, pray for wisdom, and vote my conscience. So
sometimes, Clay, when I'm watching the meetings, I think, why do the other 4 even bother showing up? Because you're, more often than not, the swing vote. Is that uncomfortable for you sometimes?
Well, I didn't really understand the dynamics of the swing vote until I got sworn in, and it was thrown in my face that there is a division on the board. And I don't want to say that. One of the things I've learned is that each individual commissioner truly loves this county and wants what's best for this county. The way to get there might differ, but I haven't seen any of them that want to hurt the people of the county. They really do want to do what's best for the county. So the swing vote thing was a real shocker. I remember the first time I had to cast the deciding vote on something, and I went back to my formula. I voted my conscience. I prayed about it. I did my research. I voted my conscience. But I was shocked at how much pressure I felt having to push that button, yes or no. It was very uncomfortable. And then God kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, that's why I called you to run. Mm-hmm. I called you to run to be able to push that button, either yes or no. And that's my job. My job is to make the controversial calls. They're not going to be popular sometimes. Just like an umpire, half of them are going to hate them, and they're going to love you one minute, they're going to hate you the next. And learning to deal with that personally has been a struggle, but I'm grounded in my faith. I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to continue to do it, the way I was called to do. So.
Frankly, sometimes you can almost feel the tension when you're watching the meetings because they're two kind of opposite sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, you can feel it too.
Yeah, you can feel it. You can feel it come through the screen sometimes, even though you're all Republican still. Right. There's two that lean one way and the other two lean the other way, and you tend to be in the middle. Tell me the truth. What's it like behind the scenes when you're off camera, when you're at the commissioner's office in the building? Do y'all talk to each other? How is your relationship?
Well, that's kind of a sticky situation because we have to be careful about the Sunshine Law. We can't discuss amongst our things anything that might come before us on a vote. So the discussions that we have off camera, if you will, are usually about family, concerts, just fluff. But I think I have a growing relationship with all four of my other commissioners. I know that we are very cordial to each other in the halls. There's no open animosity. I know that there's times when there's been tension because of a vote, but for the most part, we respect each other's position and how difficult it is to make a vote. On the campaign trail, we were kind of split one way, and now that we're in the office, things completely different from the campaign. That was easy. The campaign was it was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was easy because you could really say anything you wanted to say. I don't really mean that flippantly because I would never say anything. But there really wasn't any responsibility behind the things that you could say on the campaign trail. You could say things like, we need responsible government. And you could say things like, we need to fix the roads. And those are great things to say. But when you get in the office and the responsibility of actually fixing the road is nothing like you thought it was. For us, I'm going to try to be really brief with this, but I was really thinking about it. 85% of our ad valorem taxes, the taxes that we collect on property tax, comes from homeowners. Only 15% is commercial. So when we don't get capital improvement dollars from the state, then the burden falls on homeowners to fund these capital improvement projects. And so for me, my job as a commissioner is to make sure that some of the $350 million we send to the state every year in sales tax and gas tax comes back to us for our capital improvement projects that takes the burden off our taxpayers. And so that's probably been one of the biggest battles is that, we're a Republican county, we're a Republican commission, we have a Republican Senate, a Republican House, and a Republican governor. Why do some people want to poke our friends in state government, poke them in the eye about certain things when we depend on them for taking the burden off of our taxpayers? And so it's a real balancing act. Something that I'm still not very good at, but I'm getting better.
Now, speaking of taxes, Commissioner, trash fees are likely to go up. Now, recently at a meeting, Christian Whitehurst said he does not want to see the trash fees go up, so he floated the idea of getting rid of recycling in St. Johns County. Would you be in favor of that?
That's a great question, and let me just answer it to you this way. It depends. If the people that we are paying to pick up our recycle are actually recycling it, then I would be against getting rid of recycling. But if they're doing like a lot of places are, it's going in the landfill anyway, then we either need to change the way we do it or we need to get rid of the recycling. I definitely think we could save some money. And let me talk about that fee increase. One of the things that our public works director brought to us, and they said, look, we're only going to raise it to whatever the actual cost is. I know that we approved a big increase for over the next 5 years, but the only increase that's going to happen is actual costs. I have tasked our public works director with making sure that we never reach that cap, that is a ceiling that we never get to. So even though they can raise it, the amount that we have approved, my directives is that we never reach there. So they're not going to go up as high as they were voted on. That's just a cap. That's just like our millage rate cap. We'll go back in September and I think and vote on a budget. So last month what we did is we voted on the cap, the highest that it could possibly be. But I'm predicting that we're going to come in under that. So we'll have some savings this year.
You said our budget is bloated. What can we do to unbloat? Can we Doge St. Johns County?
Well, I'm a huge believer in being physically responsible. You know, one of the things I'm learning as I am now the one behind the curtain, if you will, looking at the budget, the thing that surprised me the most coming into office 9 months ago, I've just been in office 9 months. God, it's gone by so fast. The first thing that I told all my department directors and our county administrator when we came in is we're looking to trim. Look into your departments and start cutting because it's coming. I'm very, very proud of the fact that our administration has brought back a budget that is increased what we need to do to take care of our fire department, yet the overall budget's decreased. We've gone from about 1.23 to about 1.18. When you think about the increases we had to make in fire service, to cut the budget like that, I thought was very, very impressive. It was a lot of hard work for them to get there. They've trimmed a lot of fat out that I can see. Is there more? You can always trim more. Look, when I was with the state, sometimes, when I was with the Highway Patrol, they'd come in and say, well, we have to cut our budget 10%. And we just did it. We just went back to work, and we didn't get the extras that we would normally get. There is a way to do it. I don't think we're there yet now, but they've been very responsive. The departments have been very responsive in trimming their budgets and making sure that they're being as efficient as they can. We've got a lot of things in the future, especially when it comes to certain technologies, that's going to allow us to continue to trim.
Mm-hmm. How about getting more money from Tallahassee? Are we looking into more ways to do that?
Well, that's my biggest focus. I got criticized for saying the phrase "bring home the bacon," but we literally give them $350 million a year for their operating budget. I want some of that back, and I think it's only fair. I think it's only fair that we go to our legislatures and say, "Look, we've been good stewards. We're doing what we can. So when you appropriate these capital improvement dollars, then we want our fair share, and it's fair. We're doing what we should do to get them back." I know that it's not something we can demand. The leadership in Tallahassee swings from North Florida to South Florida about every 2 years. Every 2 years, the leadership responsibilities or area of the Florida switch. But right now, the leadership is mainly designed for South Florida, and for us to get anything is going to be tough because their priorities are going to be in South Florida. But in 2 years, we're going to have people in leadership that are going to help us get what we need. And in the meanwhile, we're just reminding them, hey, we're here. We need these capital improvement dollars. And I think we're going to be successful this year coming up.
Which brings me, Commissioner, to my next question, something you caught a lot of heat for. When hiring Bradley, Garrison, and Commando to represent our county as legal counsel, you said they could bring home the bacon from Tallahassee.
I love that term, bring home the bacon.
Yeah, you got a lot of heat for that. And some people would say, well, is it this county attorney's role to really be a lobbyist and bring money back to our county from Tallahassee, especially in light of the fact that, and this kind of got, I don't want to say sneak through in the consent agenda, but this was part of the consent agenda on February 18th. There was a motion to award 3 lobbying services for St. Johns County. We have the Fiorentino Group, the Continental Strategy Group, and the Gabaton Group. We're paying them $246,000 a year collectively.
Right.
Okay. And now recently we have added Travis Hudson to the county payroll. Clerk Brendan Patty hired him as senior advisor for intergovernmental affairs. I don't think many people even know what that is or what he does. But the clerk said, quote, "The primary goal of our new senior advisor is to reduce reliance on subsidies from our local county by fixing and securing sustainable state funding." So I guess that would be like a quasi-lobbyist. And it's no secret, he's very wealthy. He's worth millions of dollars. And now we're paying him $75,000 a year with benefits. So collectively, if you add in the 3 lobbyist groups we're paying and add in Travis Hudson's salary, that's $321,000. And that doesn't even factor in Commando's salary, who is supposedly bringing home the bacon from Tallahassee. Do we really need that many representatives in Tallahassee?
Well, let's go back and talk about bringing home the bacon. That was something that I said that my responsibility was to bring home the bacon. not rich commandos. So when looking at the 3 attorneys that were left on the list for us to hire, I looked at several factors. I don't care who supported who. I looked at individuals. Rich Commando interviewed the best. He had the best resume. And through his relationships with people who are in positions of authority in the state, felt was best positioned. Why would we not take advantage of relationships that he has built over the years to put us in a better position when it comes time for us to come in with our hat in our hand? To me, it was the smart decision to make because it puts us in a better position to get dollars. Does it guarantee anything? It doesn't get, obviously, because last year we got zero. Well, we got $1 million, and I appreciate Senator Leak for giving us $1 million for the Black History Museum. But nothing's a guarantee. It's all about relationships when you get into that realm. And I wanted to position St. Johns County with the best relationships that we could to possibly do that. Now, as far as the lobby is concerned, I had just been in office about 3 months, and that was what was recommended to me, that we continue the relationship with the lobbyists that we've had previously. So I agreed to continue the lobbyists that we had previously. Now, do I think they're doing a great job? You know, we got a big goose egg, so what does that tell you? It just tells me that we may need to continue to adjust our strategy to what works and what doesn't work. Is that a fair way to say it?
It sure is. But with 3 lobbying groups already, adding Travis Hudson as the senior advisor for intergovernmental affairs at $75,000 a year, do we really need that?
Liz, let me just stop you. Travis Hudson was hired by the clerk of the court. He is a constitutionally elected officer, and I don't have anything to do with who he hires and who he fires. Mm-hmm. It's not in our silo. He is in a completely different group, and who he decides to hire for his purposes is completely up to him, and I don't have a say. Just like he doesn't have a say who we hire on the Board of County Commission side, we don't have a say. Do I think it was the best hire he could have had? Personally, time will tell. One thing it is I have a lot of family in this county. Either me or my wife are either related to or know probably half the people in the county. The people that work in the clerk's office are telling me that he's a hustler. He's out there getting the job done. And I don't even know what the job is. It's not my job to know what his job is.
That was my next question is, what does he do?
I don't know. And that's, I would love to be able to tell the clerk how his people need to look. And that's another thing that I need to clear up that probably is in the same vein of Travis Hudson. When I won the primary back in August of last year, the staff gave me the book because, the primary, for all intent and purposes, was the election last year. If I didn't pass away, I had a really good chance of becoming elected. And I was very proud of the fact that in the November election, I got 97.15% of all votes cast for that position. 145,000 people voted for me, and I was just blown away by that. But here's the page 2 of the book that we got, of our operating manual, if you will, says that I vote to hire and fire the county administrator, the county attorney, and I vote on the budget. That's all my responsibilities are when it comes to hiring or firing anybody in the county. Anybody else from Joy Andrew down is her responsibility, not mine. I cannot tell anybody how to do their job or what to do when it comes to departments or even the guy standing in the ditch with a shovel in his hand. I can't go up there and say you're not shoveling the right way because I'm a commissioner. I don't have any legal authority to do that.
When we hired those 3 lobbying firms, that was on the consent agenda. Could you explain for those who don't know what it is, what the consent agenda is?
Yeah, there's a lot of business that county commissioners vote on every time we meet. A lot of the items that we vote on are regulatory things like the money, like writing checks every week. We're supposed to approve all of the check writing in the county, whenever they pay bills and give out paychecks and stuff like that. And so for us to have an agenda every month for all of the mundane little things we do would be overwhelming. So there's a consent among the board that this is just doing the business of doing business. And if there's an issue with any of that, any one of the commissioners at any time during the process can say, take it off consent agenda because we need to put it on the regular agenda and talk about it.
Mm-hmm. You're listening to Good Morning St. Augustine. I'm your host, Liz Ryan, chatting with Commissioner Clay Murphy. Thanks again for joining me this morning, Clay.
Yeah, you're welcome.
A lot of people are grumbling about we're growing too fast, there's too much development, and they're watching the commissioners closely.
Agree.
And they accuse commissioners of being too pro-development or in the pocket of developers.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Chris Shee is a close friend of yours, and he's a big developer here in St. Johns County. Very charitable guy. He's involved with a lot of local charities. But I have to ask you this, and he did contribute to your campaign. Would you recuse yourself from any votes that pertain to any of his developments?
Well, that's a great question, and it would really depend on what the development was. The fact that he's a friend of mine shouldn't keep me from using the same formula that I've always done. I do my homework, I pray about it, and I vote my conscience. I can tell you that the atmosphere today for new developments is not very good. I really don't know how to answer that because my initial thoughts were, hell no. No, I'm not going to recuse myself because, I would not trade my character and who I am as a God-fearing Christian man just to put money in someone's pockets. That's not who I am. But I would certainly discuss it with the legal team, and if it was inappropriate for me to vote, I would recuse myself in a heartbeat. People have talked about this for a long time. So here's the dilemma we find ourselves in this county. We go back to the fact that there were 85% ad valorem income revenues from homes and home building. Impact fees are collected. We're the highest impact fee allowed by law. And we use that money to pay for growth, schools, fire stations, parks, for roads. I've only been involved in this county government for about 2.5 years. I haven't seen a single development approved of significance in 2.5 years. So what I'm learning now as someone who's responsible is that as that growth slows, and we've done a lot to slow the growth. I mean, who knew 5 years ago that half the country would want to move to St. Johns County? So, yeah, it was a mess. One of the reasons why I wanted to run is because it was a mess. But as I get behind the curtains, if you will, like I've said before, and realize that there's a balance that we have to have. When the growth slows, the income from that growth slows, and our ability to pay our bills slows. The only people that we have to fall back on if we don't have new growth is the people who live here. Our taxpayers are going to have to shoulder that burden. The new growth doesn't pay for new growth anymore because there is no more new growth. And so even though I'm a big proponent of slowing the growth, when we really have to have a balance somewhere. We've got to have money in the bank coming from somewhere to pay our bills. And I didn't vote for that. This was before me. This is one of the problems that is dumped in my lap is that we're borrowing $100 million for parks and for building fire stations and substations. But the funding source for that is future impact fees. If we don't have future growth, we can't pay that bill. Would I have voted for it? Probably not. I was very vocal when I was on the campaign trail that we don't need to be borrowing $100 million for parks right now. What we really need to be doing is figuring out how to fix these roads. But the results of those parks, when you go to those parks when they open and you see the hundreds of kids and families that are associated with that, it's hard to say, yeah, we can't give a little extra for that. It's an amazing thing that we see. It's a good thing for the county. But now it's upon me, and I say me as the commission, to find ways to pay for the money for that we've borrowed for these amenities. We've got great amenities. We have a great sheriff's department. We have a great fire department. People want to live here because it's a great place to live. Our schools are fantastic. We got a new superintendent. I'm already adoring this guy. He's a go-getter. His staff is doing great things. When we talked about e-bikes and getting that, giving us room to put an e-bike safety class in the classrooms this year. We're going to have them in before Christmas. This is a great place to live. But there are challenges that I have inherited through the slowing of the growth. I don't have a problem with slowing the growth, but we have to figure out a way to replace that income. And if we're not fostering relationships with the people in Tallahassee that can help us replace that, then we're cutting off our nose to spite our face. And it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge.
Okay, I threw out Chris Shee as an example because off the top of my head, that's the only developer I am aware of that donated to your campaign. So let me ask you.
Yep, he was the only one.
Okay. And he's just a friend of yours. You're not related to him.
We are brothers in Christ.
Okay.
We are not related.
You're not related. Are you in business with him in any way? Okay.
No way.
If you were aware of another commissioner that did financially somehow benefit through relatives, through business partnerships, if they did financially benefit from a decision that was in the hands of the county commissioners as far as development, would you expect them to recuse themselves from the vote?
Yeah. If I was business partners and I was going to make some money off of anything that Chris did, then I would absolutely do it, but I'm not. I have been to the Tringali barn a couple of times for some events, but other than that, we are not in business, and I wouldn't benefit. Look, I see social media posts almost every day accusing me of lining my pockets, and that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. Not because it hasn't happened in the past, that there have been politicians that have done that, but I didn't get into this to line my pockets. My wife and I are blessed. God has blessed us in ways I never imagined as a young trooper, just trying to, work enough off-duty jobs to get the bills paid for my growing family. We're blessed. It's not about money for me. If it was, I wouldn't have been here. I don't want to jeopardize my income source any other way. I don't make enough money here to even matter. That's the farthest thing from my mind. I couldn't care less. But for me, it's about doing the right thing. Our founding fathers 250 years ago, left the farms or whatever they were doing, and they went and they gave of their time and their service to this fledgling country. I have the same desire to come away from my business for either 4 years or 8 years, serve my county, and then go back to what I was doing, because we're supposed to be that way. These people who stay in office for more than 2 terms, I think, are doing it for the wrong reasons. And I want to be careful when I say that, because I don't know what their motivations are. But for me, I would self-term. 2 terms is the most I would ever do.
Commissioner Murphy, as a former trooper, what's your assessment of the way crime is handled here in St. Johns County?
Well, I've worked all over the state of Florida, and I don't know if I've ever been to a place that is as aggressive and taking care of their citizens as this department is. As you know, I was a reserve deputy here for about 9 years after I retired, and I am proud to say that I wore the green uniform for 9 years. This is a great county. We have great services. The sheriff here is a go-getter when it comes to crime. The men and women on the streets are some of the best, not just morally, but they've been trained better than just about anybody else. And I've been all over the state of Florida. We have a great department here, and this is one of the safest places to be.
Okay, Commissioner Murphy, shifting to transportation infrastructure. It's such a fast-growing county. It's really hard for the roads to keep up with all the traffic. Do you support the proposed transit rail line between Jacksonville and St. Augustine?
On face value, yeah. I think it would be great to get traffic off of that north-south. US 1 has carried the burden of slowdowns and backups on 995 traditionally since I came here. I was a trooper here in 1991. Every time there's a backup on the interstate, 207, Holmes Boulevard, 16, US 1 just gets inundated with flow over from the interstate. So I think it would be a wonderful way to partner with public-private partnership that would allow us to get people's ability to run back and forth on the rails instead of in the cars. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about infrastructure, one of the biggest things that we can do to slow down the giant crushes of rush hour traffic in St. Johns County, public transportation is important, but also affordable housing. Because people can't afford to live in St. Johns County, they're forced out, whether it's Flagler or Flagler States or Putnam County or Clay County or Duval County. They're forced to live somewhere else and then make the commute back to their jobs. If they had affordable housing here, then we would eliminate every one of those trips. And so by saying, we don't want to build any more houses and we don't want anybody else in St. Johns County, by taking the affordability out of it, we're actually causing the very problems that we're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. So bringing this housing back in where there's infrastructure and where the jobs are and making them affordable. I got a lot of criticism for voting for a density increase from 13 to 16 units an acre, because people don't understand that. I voted for an increase in density in residential Res D, as in Delta, not anywhere else. And there's only a small batch of Res D in the county, and most of it's in West Augustine, where it needs to be. All of those older lots with those older houses, and they were very small, and the houses are now being torn down. It allows someone to come in and to build a duplex on a lot that used to have a single-family home. So now we can double the amount of families. We can cut the costs in half, and people can live here instead of having to live in Flagler States or somewhere else and make that commute. We can decrease it right now by looking at affordable housing in areas where it's important. This increase in density only occurs in residential D, and it's only from 13 to 16.
Now, speaking of affordable housing, Commissioner Murphy, you recently posted on Facebook that some people got really ugly with you for wanting to help the less fortunate. Is your family being harassed or bullied online or in person? Have there been any incidents in person where somebody that you care about, you love, that you're close to has been treated badly?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I get bashed on a regular basis. I can just say that my niece's husband was stopped at a red light in town, and someone got out of their vehicle and walked up to his car, knocked on the window because he had a bumper sticker on the back of his car, and said, "I know Clay Murphy personally," and then began to tell him how he doesn't like me. And he said it in a very graphic way. That's over the line. I think the social media rhetoric needs to be toned down because we're getting into an area where someone can get hurt. I carried a gun my entire adult life. I would not want someone to make a mistake with me or with my family that would get somebody hurt. That's not what we need to do here. We need to be able to discuss our ideas and have differences of opinions that don't spill over into physical actions or verbal actions, because that leads to physical actions too. You know, I told my wife, I said, "Look, you need to take the sticker off your car." And she goes, "I ain't taking my sticker off. They don't know who I am." And I'm like, my wife's my hero. That was very emotional for me to know that my family might be in danger because of a vote in the county commission.
Your wife looks like a cream puff, but I think she's pretty tough.
Oh, she's tough. Anybody knows her knows she's tough. She's the queen.
And you're definitely a family man. You're all about your faith and family.
Well, there was a time when I was a young, dumb, single guy. Many, many decades ago, I wasn't as blessed as I am now. But yeah, my wife, my 3 children, my 6 grandchildren.
Wow.
I've got my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law. We're so blessed. So
absolutely. Well, Commissioner Murphy, I'm so glad you're joining me again next week because I haven't scratched the surface of the things I want to talk to you about.
Oh, yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Let's go.
So tune in again next week. I'll sit down again with Commissioner Murphy because he's been so gracious with his time to me, and I appreciate it. What do you think you'll do with the rest of your Sunday?
Oh, I got to go to church. And my son and daughter-in-law are actually in Bible college. So after church, me and Nana are going to go watch the grandkids. So
terrific. Wonderful. Thank you for tuning in to Good Morning St. Augustine. And remember, all our programs can be downloaded as a podcast. Go to flaglerbroadcasting.com, click on podcasts, and scroll down to Good Morning St. Augustine. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday in our beautiful, ancient, historic city.